there. So yes, our topic today is on exit planning. Want to thank all of you, frankly, for taking an hour out of your life to think about your future. It may happen by itself, but we would much rather you all be intentional about your future and where that might go, which is why this topic's so important. And I'm gonna illustrate this just real quickly, and then we're gonna get Dan, our good friend Dan Paxton, introduced and up here to share it with you. But this is just something that was so clear. I was talking to Dan earlier this week and sharing with him that the noise in the background is we're having our staircase in the house turned from carpet to hardwood. It's the last big project of our, getting the house ready to market if we need to. And we got more bedrooms than we need. We're in a suburban area. And for the last 5 years, the housing prices just keep declining. And we said, well, we'll get this ready. So someday, maybe a few years from now, if we're ready to downsize, the house is ready. Well, my son calls me and he says, hey, Dad, have you heard? The market's up. You should sell the house. You should be ready. I said, well, I can't. It's all torn up. So the point is, if you are ready, no matter when the market tells you it's time, you're ready to take advantage of whatever option you want. We had in mind it's going to be out in the future. But, if we had it all done, we might be able to take advantage of something. So, just an example of if you're looking at your business and you're looking at your situation, if there's some things you might want to polish up or look at, the time to work on that is now. So just a little result or a little example from the day-to-day that we're all living in with this hot real estate market we've got. So with no further ado, I do want to introduce Dan Paxton here. Dan's been a good friend of ours for a long time. We got to know him through his journey as when he became an EOS implementer, but for the 35 years before that, he was a business owner, entrepreneur, much like many of you. And, he thought about, well, maybe someday I'll sell my business. But when it actually came time to do that, well, he's got a story that I'm sure he'll share with us as he talks today about how that went and what he learned from his own personal transition experience. But as we've gotten to know Dan over the last couple of years through his work with EOS, he's just as passionate as we are about helping business owners get what they want. But as he put his life experience together with what we do in EOS, just deepened his passion for this next phase, the transition, the exit, or whatever it is you want. And so he's now kind of pivoted, we've heard that word in the last year, pivoted his work with entrepreneurs, more focusing on the exit plan and gotten himself certified and really dug deep into how this can work for small, mid-sized growing companies. So the whole point is, yeah, I know you love this business. You can't see yourself not doing it for the foreseeable future. Doesn't mean you shouldn't start thinking about it. So with no further ado, Dan Paxton, take it away.
Thank you, Clark. That was such a good illustration. I don't think there's anything I need to talk about. I mean, that kind of told it all. So we'll just go to Q&A. So actually, I like to talk. I like to begin any of my talks or webinars with my favorite exit planning story, and it's about a man who owned a business, sort of a family business, that and he started thinking about his own exit. So he thought the timing was great. His daughter was just getting married, so he had a new millennial son-in-law. And so he, sometime right before the wedding, the father-in-law was talking to the son-in-law to be, and he says, your mother-in-law and I decided we really want you to understand how much we love you and we want you in a family. So we've given you 50% of the equity in this business. The son-in-law goes, wow, that's phenomenal. So the dad says, well, so we just got to decide what we're going to do with you. I thought that we get you started on the shop floor. And the son-in-law goes, I really don't like noise that much. And I goes, oh, okay. How about if we put you in accounting? You can sort of learn the ropes, learn the finances of the business. He goes, I really don't see myself as a desk jockey. The father-in-law is trying to think harder. He goes, okay, how about sales? So the son-in-law finally says, there's nothing I hate more than sales. So the father-in-law says, you got to work with me a little bit here. I'm I've given you half of the business and I've given you 3 different positions. What do you think I should do? And the son-in-law says, buy me out. So it's I'm not associating that with a millennial mentality. Anyway, I will quickly tell Clark's story about my exit planning path. And this is kind of confession I like to get off my mind so I can be cleansed and feel like I'm not hiding behind this when I talk to people. So some years ago, I did need to exit a business that I owned. And this was just prior to me joining EOS. And so I thought about, I had a year. I gave myself a year. But, so let me count the mistakes as I'm going along. A year, number one, definitely not long enough time. But I did. So I waited a couple months actually, and by the time I started, I thought I need a little help here. So in trying to get a little help, what I found was a residential real estate broker. So the third thing is I thought, man, I have worked hard and long. This thing's got to be worth a ton. So a lot of mistakes made there. Bottom line, it was a fiasco of an exit. I just had to move on, but it always stayed with me. It was always in the back of my mind that, man, there's got to be a better way, because I actually had looked around the market at the time, and I didn't have any options. I couldn't find anybody, so I did it on my own. So when I get that disclaimer off, now I feel better about telling you that there's a time when I didn't even know how to spell exit planning, and now I are one. But so let's move on here. So you signed on today to listen to a topic called exit planning, and right off the bat, I'm going to kind of change it up on you just a little bit to exit options, and it actually ties into what Clark just said there, something he and I had talked about earlier this week. So exit options and exit planning are actually a little bit different. The difference can be significant, but basically what we're talking about here is maximizing the value of your business now. So in a normal exit planning scenario, a client will say, come in and we'll sit down and they'll talk about an exit time. They say, I want to exit 5 years out. And then what they'll do is they'll slowly grow their business during that 5-year time so that they maximize the value of it at the time of the sale to maximize their dollars. Well, we like exit options is about shortcutting that circuit and working on improving the business value now versus gradually. And by doing this, you're creating options. One option, if you just think about it, if your business if you're going to exit in 5 years and you get it tuned up in 1 year, you get 4 years to enjoy a business that's more enjoyable now that it's more ready than it was prior to that. So you can enjoy it. You might, it can mean all kinds of things. It might mean working a little less, a little more golf, beach, shopping, whatever. But it's just one simple reason to get it ready now versus waiting. A bigger one is opportunities. And this is a little bit what Clark was talking about. The opportunities could be, two different types. One would be an opportunistic buyer, somebody who's doing a roll-up or looking for a business in your sector might come knocking. And if you don't have your business really ready, you may not be able to make the sale if you wanted to, but if so, you wouldn't be getting top dollar. And the other one is just being ready when the market is hot. And I actually have a good example that I have a client in Michigan. And it was this is a little while ago now, but when we had 2 or 3 sessions, and I quickly realized this was a healthcare technology company, equipment and technology. And as soon as I really got into what was going on with them, and they revealed in about the 3rd meeting that they had contracts that was going to take them from $6 million actually last year to $10 million this year, and it looked like $20 million in 2022. So they were just on fire. So talking to some of my PE friends, they're saying, Dan, a time the market is hot for those types for that industry right now, you need to tell your folks they need to get on it right away. So I actually had to kind of cut short my engagement with them because what they needed were some M&A folks. They needed to get on the thing immediately and sell it because they were talking about multiples in the 20 to 40 range because it was such an exciting market they're in. So it's just a matter, so it's just an example of being ready when opportunity knocks. The third one's sort of a negative one, and that's disability. God forbid, but any of us could become disabled or worse, maybe even death, divorce. We call them the 5 Ds in the exit planning world, but so some untoward thing could happen, and if your business is ready, then it's better ready to serve your survivors, your family, your whomever are going to inherit something from you. And lastly, being ready, there's nothing wrong with being ready and then just writing out the plan so you go to where you're going to go originally. So let me move on here to so for those of you who really like graphics, look at that as all the business owners who are wanting to exit, so they would all need and benefit from exit planning today. But look at the bigger picture, which is all business owners. I will tell you that all business owners need exit options, so that this is the picture that should be in your mind when you think about exit strategy. It's really about exit options, and it's not very different. It just tells people, don't be fooled by the concept of exit meaning something that you're going to do way down the line, and you don't need to be concerned yet about about that future point. So this is a great statement. Chris Snyder is the owner and CEO of the Exit Planning Institute, one of the 2 governing bodies or the 2 sanctioning bodies in exit planning. And if you really read this, it says exit planning is simply good business strategy combined with personal financial objectives. And so if you take exit planning out of there, it just says, hey, this is just good business. It doesn't say good business to get ready for some future point. It's just good business to be doing this. So the question is, we know that we're all hearing an awful lot about exit planning now, and the real question is, why now? Why are we hearing so much discussion about this now? And I could talk about this for a couple hours, but let me just narrow it down to 3 really important points. The first one is that there is a definite oversupply in businesses for sale on the near horizon. So I'm sure you've probably seen the data. There's about 7 million privately owned businesses in the US who have more than 1 employee. And of that, about 2/3 of them are owned by baby boomers. And the baby boomers consistently in studies are saying that they want out in the next 5 years. So if you bring that forward,
you did a good job on your sandwich. Let's do another one, okay?
Somebody need to mute there. Okay, thanks, Beth. So what it means is, those boomers wanting out in the decade of the 20s, we're going to see an unprecedented supply. I mean, unprecedented supply. The numbers show that there will be 15 times more businesses for sale than there have ever been historically. 15 times more businesses. So that's bad news by itself. We don't like to build that much competition, but it gets worse. There is a shortage in demand because the 2 age sectors behind the boomers, the millennials really don't have the dollars. They've been spending their money differently, enjoying the day, and they've really, by and large, not saved money. So they don't really have the money to buy these businesses. And the millennials don't necessarily have the appetite for the 70-hour weeks that they see the boomers doing. So now we've got oversupply, under demand. It just keeps getting worse, but that's still not the worst. The third and worst strike is what history tells us about businesses that have come on the market for sale. Almost need to put your seatbelt on for this one. Only about 20% of businesses that have ever come on the market for sale have ended up in a sale. Think about that. Oversupply, under demand, terrible historic results. It's not a good picture. And I'm not just a doomsayer. I'm just spitting out the facts here. But what it clearly tells us that only the best companies are going to survive and make it. You know, the best in industry will the people who actually make that happen. So I get ahead of myself here. So a business owner would be asking himself when you hear all this data, so how do I know if I'm the best? You know, so how do I know if I'm the best in my industry or best in class? Or how do I get to be best in class? Or it just continues, the same question really is, how can I be sure I can even sell this thing regardless of price? Continue that. How can I be sure I sell it at a good price? Last view of that is, how can I be sure I'm not in that 80%? So there's a lot going on there, and clearly the concept of only the best are going to survive is one that needs a lot of attention paid to it. So let's get into some discussions about exit planning to try and kind of build backwards to this. So the Business Enterprise Institute is one of the two governing, I always say governing, one of the two accrediting bodies in the US for exit planning. And they begin with a statement that it's about the creation and, much more importantly, the execution of a strategy that enables an owner to get what he or she wants out of their business. Sounds a little bit like EOS, helping people get what they want out of their business. In this case, we're talking about getting out when they want to on their terms and conditions. And would say to you that to an exit planner, if an exit occurs when it does not meet the objectives of the owners, it's really not a successful exit. So it involves a written exit plan. There are multiple professionals involved. We're going to talk about that a bunch in some future slides. Always, 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 we're trying to, our goal is to maximize value, minimize taxes. And in the middle of this whole thing is the exit planner. And we refer to the exit planner as a quarterback. A very important role and a very important dynamic in what's going on today in exit planning. So a little diagram for people who really like those. So you see the exit planner and the owner in the middle. So they're cooking it up together, deciding what is it that the owner is going to want to do. And so that's the part I talked about. So the exit planner is the person who works with the owner to develop that exit plan. And it's important to understand that the exit planner doesn't know everything about what these specialists know. The exit planner just knows the questions. So exit planners are trained to understand the questions and then to pull in all these people that surround the circle here, who are the specialists who each know their part of the puzzle. And lastly, we always just advise people, if you ever start to work with an exit planner or trying to find an exit planner and they don't advocate the multi-advisor approach, then you need to run as fast as possible, because that's somebody who really doesn't get the picture and you're not going to be best served there. I'll take a real quick look at the industry just so you have a wee little bit of background. It's like 10 to 15 years old. Two accrediting bodies, BEI and EPI, and they are the ones that accredit the quarterbacks. So it's little, just so you have some sense of it. CEXP, that's what I am on my side. There are about 300 of me in the country. On the CEPA side, there's about 3,500 CEPAs. So really, when you look across the country, that's less than 4,000 quarterbacks. The industry does recognize the multi-advisor approach, which is both good news and bad news. It's good news because people who know that they want to play in part of the group that the exit planners put together, they know and appreciate that it's a multi-advisor thing and they are just a piece of the puzzle. Cost can be pretty tall. Mid-sized businesses and up. So these are businesses in the, we'll just even say 10 million and up in their revenue. And it kind of starts, probably an opening numbers, probably 50 to 60 grand a year and going up to several $100,000 a year for larger companies. So it's a pretty pricey thing as it relates to bigger businesses. And what is the current, that's just data on it. So what's the current state of the industry? And this is of particular importance to y'all. The state of the industry is that it's still extremely in the formative stages. It's highly fragmented, and it's highly fragmented because it's multidisciplinary. When you look at the picture, what we've got today is so many different pieces of the puzzle being solved by any one person. So I'm going to tell you a little bit later, in the business that I have started, I work with accounting firms to help get them into that white circle right there, so that they become the center of the universe and the quarterbacks for exit planning process. And when I work with an extremely large Chicago-based accounting firm that I started this with. And when I first started working with them, I said, "So, are you guys in the exit planning business?" They said, "Absolutely." Yeah, let's talk about that. In the end, they realized that what they really do is they're not in the exit planning business where they can hang a shingle. They weren't before working with me, but where they'd hang up a shingle and say, "We do exit planning." They just did their piece of it. So they were the blue circle accountant out here, and they were just a piece of it. So I kind of refer to that whole thing, all the circles around the white circle, as technical myopia. Each of those knows their piece, and each of them doesn't really have the ability to be the quarterback. So when you look at this, I would ask a question to see how well you're tracking. When you look at all the circles, how many exit planners do we see here? Let's see, 3, 6, 8, 9 circles. One exit planner. The only exit planner here is the exit planner in a white circle. That's a quarterback. That's one of the accredited either CEPAs or CEXPs because they understand the process. Of most significance, this might be a big surprise to you, in the entire circle there, the one for most businesses that is most important is the value builder, because value building, as you're going to see in the next few slides, is central to and about usually the most important thing that we need to accomplish. And finding value builders is normally a very, very tough thing. Now, and because you all know EOS one way or another, EOS in my vernacular, in my definition, people at EOS, that is a value building system, sort of one of a kind. So value builders, by and large, though, are sort of hard to find for all sizes of companies. So taking me to just a few fundamentals to each of these, kind of maybe bring it close. The whole process starts with the foundational objectives of the owner, and we're going to talk about what those really are in the next slide. But 99.9999% of the time, businesses in the exit planning mode need to improve the value of their business. We're going to talk about that. That's the thesis of the rest of what we're going to talk about. Big businesses versus smaller businesses. The process is different. The preparation is different. Always trying to maximize price and minimize tax. Always takes time. Always takes more time than people think to make all these things happen. Again, it's multi-advisor, and we always need a quarterback. So let's talk about those foundational objectives, because this is what we as exit planners focus on exclusively when we're working with an owner. It's just 3 of them. The first one is, when do you want out? When do you want out? Tell us what works for you if you have it your way. How much money do you need when you do hit that time and you want out? And to whom do you want to sell this thing? So again, there's days worth of discussion on those. I'm just going to hone in a little bit today on how much, because it kind of relates to most of the topic that's important to us here today. So going back to those foundational objectives, that the fundamentals, we're talking about building value. That moves us to the concept of how much money do you actually need? How much money do you need when you're ready to exit? And that question is really 3 questions when you think about it. So it's like, how much do you need to support your lifestyle post-exit? because once you sell that business, you're not going to have another chance to go get more. So how much do you need? And that continues. The questions there continue. So how much do you have right now? Or so when you stop working, what kind of continuing income? So hopefully Social Security. What else do you have? What are your non-business assets? And then what's the value of business? So you put all that together. How much do you need? How much do you have? And that tells us whether or not there is an asset gap where you don't have enough until the business value hits. You don't have enough actually to execute a successful exit. And we call that the asset gap. And that's a huge piece. But I just casually mentioned when I was going through these three components, and since I just mentioned, well, and of course there's your business value. Well, the business value is the bogey in this whole thing. It's a startling research shows that about 70%, 78% of owners anticipate that their retirement will be funded by their business sale. And about 98% of those same people have no clue what their business is worth. So we got a little bit of work to do there on the business value thing, because that's pretty important when it comes down. But let's kind of focus on this asset gap so it's just really clear about what I'm talking about. So just a real simple example here. And this would be post-exit. So if you've got other income of $50,000, annual expenses of $250,000, which is your stated lifestyle. You've done a lot of work with a planner and say, I need 250 grand a year. So your net need is you need another 200. So when in very simple math, and it really doesn't work this way, but just to round it and understand. So if you've got a 20-year life expectancy for retirement, 200,000 times 20 says you need $4 million. Just round, just accept that. Except it's rounded for illustration. So you look on the other side, what do I have? Well, I got $600,000 in liquid. In the next 5 years, I'm going to take out more money from the business. So I'll add another 400. Business is worth 200. So I've got $3 million worth of assets. So what's the asset gap here? I need 4 million. I've got 3 million. So I've got $1 million asset gap. So when I'm sitting with the client, and we're trying to determine where they're going to go, we need to figure out how to fill that asset gap of $1 million. So slide on to the next slide here, if it'll go with me. So the asset gap has a lot to do with the answer to this question. So if we had an ability to take a poll here, I would ask you, what do you think? Just think about it for a second. What do you think is the #1 reason for an unsuccessful exit? And I'm going to put a few up here. Do you think it's because the buyers don't have enough money for down payment? Business is too complex to understand? I hope there's no lawyers and accountants on the video. Did they screw anything up? Are the buyers just too stupid to get the whole thing? Or is it that, hey, this is my baby and it's got to be worth millions? So the answer is, it's my baby and it's got to be worth millions, because most owners, the actual worth of most businesses is less, and often considerably less than the owner's perceived worth of it. And then opportunistically, even the actual worth at the time is less than its potential worth. So it shows that we've got upside and we've got some opportunity here. So just closing out that asset gap concept, it turns out that for most business owners in the U.S., about 80 to 90% of their net worth is tied up in their business. So that's got to be liquidated. That has to mean that's saying we've got to have a successful business. How do we do that? We've got to grow the business, and we've got to grow the value of the business, which is what we're going to talk about here, which is what exit planning really is about. So let's back away. I'm talking a lot about business value. So let's just back away and dissect what exit planning really is. So maintain it's really just two things. To make it easy to understand, it's really two things. The first one is, what are all the technical things that we need to do? The legal, the accounting, estate planning, things that are pretty objective. You can look to them. We use people outside of the circle to get those things done, but those are technical. The other side is value building. And when we talk about value building, I'll introduce a concept that I'm going to bet is brand new to everybody here. And that's value of a business is far more than just its income. In fact, the value of a business is far more about the value, about building value of intangible assets than it is of what you'd expect. So when I said there's two branches to exit planning, really, when you sort of look at the anatomy of it, that's kind of relative value. Those technical things that seem, man, I got a lot of gymnastics, a lot of hard things I got to do. It's not there. It's in the value building side where everything happens. So building business value. So what you thought walking in here is that we all talk about this business value is just our cash flow times some multiple, when in fact, that's really not the story. That's where the story begins, but it's all about value drivers. There's a set of value drivers at work that need to be at work in a company to give it value. So question is, what is a value driver? And this will go to Clark's point again. So there are elements of a business that increase a potential buyer's value and appeal to business. So in selling a home, what are the things? What are the things in a home that, so hey, really nice kitchen, nice bathrooms, nice master closets, things that make one house more attractive than another. That's what value drivers are. Those are the things that make a business more valuable and more appealing to a potential buyer. These value drivers absolutely must be in place for any successful business exit. In fact, they're so important that absence of value drivers sometimes can mean that there's really no value in a business at all. Further, we can take two businesses in the exact same industry that have the same EBITDA or the same cash flow and come up with totally different values because they've got different levels of value drivers. So that, I hope that resonates. That tells us that this value driver thing's a pretty important concept. So this list of value drivers comes from BEI, the Business Enterprise Institute, one of those bodies we talked about before. And this list is really an important list. It comes from, the Institute developed by asking hundreds of exit planning advisors, what do you see? What have you seen over time as the most important value drivers that influence or direct the value of a business? And this is a list they came up with, and it's a prioritized list. So this is days, weeks worth of conversation, but we'll really kind of hit the top level of these. So next level management just talks about, kind of who's running the show, what's it going to look like when this owner leaves. Operating systems. I mean, as you look at each one of these, it's kind of intuitive what we're talking about. These are things which, if they are present, they make the business more attractive than a business that does not have strength in these value drivers. And I'm going to hit on a couple of them here in just a minute, but the key here is that together, all of these value drivers give us what the industry calls transferable value. I mean, without the presence of some of these values, there is no transferable value, meaning that a business might not be able to sell at all. I have an example from a past client in San Francisco. This was a lady who was had a design build business, and so it's a couple $1 million business. She's making a little over 600 grand in cash flow, so it's a nice business. And she's wanting some help with getting out of the business. So from just talking with her, very in the first session, I knew that she wasn't going to like where I was going to be headed with this. But it turned out, because she had nobody else in the business that was even close to understanding what she did, she was the business. If she stepped out of the business, there was absolutely no transferable value in the business. And I had to tell her that she basically, her $600,000 a year when she stops the business, is absolutely worthless because she was not going to be able to sell her business unless she made some changes. So that's pretty ugly, but it's true. So bottom line of what is transferable value at the highest level, it's what is the business worth when the owner walks out the door. So that's the whole concept. That's the next level management question. Are there people in place? Is there a structure in place? Everything related to that, going all the way down to culture. It's why next level management is so important. Everything else pales in comparison. Next level management in the industry is referred to as the mother of all value drivers. So it's extremely important. In fact, when we have to begin to price any business, it begins with next level management. If that's not in place, we don't have a ticket to the dance. Having it in place is the opening. That's the opening valuation we're going to get for business. And then depending upon the strength of the rest of those value drivers, talks about how much higher the business is going to be above that next level price. So for those, again, who like visuals, so it's about cash flow, surrounded by, embedded in the value drivers. That creates transferable value, which is what creates successful exits. So value of the business. So what is the value of the business? So we really have two sides, two types of assets in every business, tangible assets and intangible assets. And this slide is not going to end up where you would think if I would just ask you questions about. So the tangible assets, that's your bottom line, that's your EBITDA, that's what your accounting system shows. How are we doing there with what are our tangible assets? The rest of the story is about intangible assets, which are all about your collective intellectual capital. It's the value drivers. And this is a schematic. I didn't make this up. This came out of, this came from EPI, where they're showing the relative value of these intangibles in driving the overall value of a business. If you understand this little chart, this is extremely dramatic. It's saying that the majority of the value of your business is about having implemented value drivers. So what are intangible assets? Here we are right back to our opening slide again, or the slide about all the value drivers. This is what they are. That's what this list of value drivers is talking about. It's about the intangible assets. These are things that, we don't normally talk about that. One business owner at the club talked to another business owner about, the value of the business. None of this stuff comes up. They just talk about their bottom line. So it's about these intangibles where everybody is usually in trouble. So early on, I talked about there needing to be a hurry about this whole exit planning process. So people don't gravitate to that. They have a tough time accepting that. So I always like to throw in a few of the high level reasons why it is that everything I'm talking about really should be done in a hurry. And just a few of them here are that the experience is in exit planning. We look back at exits that have been done and done right. It's a 5+ year deal. It takes that long to get the pieces in place, one of which is just time to build the business value. But some of the tax minimization strategy, depending upon C versus S corporation, your structure today, some of the changes that have to happen there, the statutes make you wait like 7 to 10 years before you can gain the tax advantage of making one of those changes. So their tax minimization requires time. An insider trader, which is one of insider transfer, which is one of the most important and most often used exit strategies, developing or bringing somebody, selling the business to somebody that's already inside. Well, one of the best kept secrets of exit planning is that a great strategy can be created to bring an insider along to buy a business, even in situations where that insider, one of your key managers, doesn't have any money. So there's a great strategy of how to do that, but it takes time. You can make it happen, but it takes time. market conditions that I referred to in my earlier example, and that Clark referred to in the real estate thing, the market conditions, if you're ready, if you're not ready and the market conditions pass you, you've lost. And then there's the contingency, and this is a much bigger deal than people think about until they hear the statistics. So here we're talking about protection of the assets against what we call in the industry the 5Ds. So the fact is, nobody knows. I mean, nobody knows what our health is going to be this afternoon. Any of these things could impact us, could come into our future very near term. And it's just another reason why we want to have the business and our overall finances in as good a shape as we can possibly have now versus waiting. And here comes the stunner. About 50% of businesses that are sold below their asking price, or what they below what could have been a market price, because they were affected by one of the 5Ds. They were caught with their pants down. They were not ready for the thing to happen. So I hate to be gloom and doom about that, but it's just a fact. So the value, we talked about these early on, you're getting dressed, because getting business ready, because the market is just so competitive. Again, two branches of that are, can I get this thing sold at all? And more importantly, if I can get it sold, can I get the price that I need? Are you ready for opportunities when the market's right? And again, by building value in the business, a lot of people just find out that they like the business so much now that they just want to stay with it. Another thing is that it gives you that 5D. So in all these, I just want to keep reiterating, the focus is on value, not income. So all of this requires a paradigm shift. So while you've been, here are a whole bunch of current paradigms. So we need to shift from thinking about this long future thing to building value today. We need to move from just bottom line to be considered value. We need to move from just me, the single owner, to all the stakeholders. Who are all the people that I need that are counting on me here? Huge is our focus on intangible assets. The fact that doing this is not just a one-off project, that all collectively, this is exit planning as a process. It can't just plan it, but we've got to bring it to life with an action, and it requires a team of people. So the million-dollar question is, how do I do it? So one of the ways that I'm going to show you about how to do it is, and this will just explain kind of how it works in the marketplace with exit planners working with large companies. So for beginners, so this is the process in my company, ExitSmarts. The very first thing is to just begin with an assessment, with an own voice.
Just a reminder, we're about quarter of, so we want to make sure we leave time for questions too.
Okay, I forgot about the fact that we started 20 minutes late, so let me fly through this as fast as I can. So we began with, kind of an assessment of where do you stay, where are you right now? That assessment can lead to somebody who wants to go on. They actually want to develop an exit plan. We do that. From then, the next stage is, once the plan is developed, do you want to move on into exit plan implementation? During the implementation process, this is when we bring in all those technical advisors. It's when we build in the value builders. I'll really fly through this one. The value building process specifically, just the value building component of the whole thing, begins with a vision. The vision obviously can change and throughout the life of the exit process. We need to create an operating system upon which everything can be built. This sounds a lot familiar with everybody that's in the EOS world. We've got to document and add processes, the management, the whole next level thing needs to be right. And then these 4 areas, all the different value builders. So I've really put up 8 different value building components here. All of those, if we can track those back to those 9, the 9 value builders that BEI showed you. So moving to the EOS world, what the good news about those of you who are in EOS or thinking about EOS is that the reality is EOS directly addresses at least 7 of those 9 value drivers. Everything that's in gold here is addressed, or can be, at least tangentially. And the only thing that it really doesn't address, but it could, it just doesn't overtly address, usually diversified customer base or recurring revenue as defined by current revenue, talking about customers repeating customers. But anyway, it could be EOS. Just by paying attention to these in the EOS model, we can easily get there and cover everything. So the paradigm, the shift, I hope the things that you want to take away, this is about building value, not just income. It's about sooner, not versus later, so that people can have options. So last slide here, Clark. Next steps, if you want to do it just to find out, there's nothing attached to this. If you want to come to my site and take a readiness assessment, it takes you about 15 minutes to do it. You're certainly welcome to do that. I'm happy to give you an hour of time to debrief that with you, to help you understand sort of from a readiness standpoint, how good or how bad are you standing at the time. Then you need to find a quarterback to get the exit process started. Clark, it's yours.
Thanks, Dan. So we've kind of turned the fire hose on you, which was probably expected. But so where is everybody in this process? What were some of the ahas that Dan shared that you're thinking about now that you weren't thinking about this morning? Anybody want to share some, or if you have specific questions, unmute yourself and ask away.
I was amazed by the sheer number of baby boomers that are going to be leading business in the next, was it 5 years?
I think, Dennis, if the world of business owners just knew that, just that one slide, it would cause.
That has an effect on the sale of your business if everybody's doing it at the same time.
Huge. Good observation. I guess if people had questions, Clark, can they put them in the?
Sure, you can type them in the chat, or just raise your hand. We're an informal group here. What questions do you have? Yeah, go ahead, Nancy.
I wrote it in the chat, but I'll just say it here. How do we talk clients into hiring an EOS implementer or someone like Dan to spend the money and spend the time? They're usually too busy. I guess we should show them your talk, for example, but I find it challenging to convince clients my small business clients to hire people to do this stuff that'll really help increase their value. How do you sell it to them? Just show them the PowerPoint you did here?
Well, there's help me just a little bit. What are you, a lawyer? What is your business?
Yeah, I'm a business lawyer, so I help clients. I besides doing formations and contracts, I do M&A work. So clients that are selling or buying a business, and the seller, just as you're describing, the sellers just don't realize how far ahead they need to plan. And I want to help them more than I am with that, with your good advice here. How do I talk them into it?
Well, first of all, you can't totally talk them into it. It is clearly about education, because it's just what's making this whole thing. The action hasn't started yet today, which is shocking. It's because, to Dennis's observation, they don't know the data. They don't know how tough it is to sell a business. They just don't know it. Secondly, and as important as any of, Nancy, is the emotional tie. For most business owners, this is what they've spent their life. It's their baby. The thought of not doing that business anymore is debilitating. But a simple fact to every one of them is that what we know is sooner or later, everybody's going to exit their business. There's no way around, with your boots on or with your boots off, you're going to do it. So you got to start thinking about it. Think about it before it's too late. But it's that's a big challenge, Nancy.
This is Rob with Calco Industries. How you guys doing today?
Doing well. Go ahead, Robert.
Renee is our champion on EOS from advisory standpoint, so I've learned a lot from him. But my takeaway from here and working with the business that I've been working with as a CFO for the last year and a half, I look at the 9 items on BEI value, and what I take away from here is, I think businesses of the size that we're in, small businesses, family-owned, second-gen, type environment, they're not addressing the 9 in their strategy development, and as they work through trying to improve their business. And then when you look at the cost of having to utilize an EOS advisor, yes, the cost is there, and it's real, and it's taking money out of their pockets at the end of the day. I think that's somewhat how we look at it. But however you start communicating that investment, what they're not doing in the business on these 9 items, and that by not doing those things, the value loss of the business is you migrate from, I think my business is the best one in the world, and when I exit out, I'm going to get the maximum value, to not doing these things, and then what that financial impact would be to them against that small investment that they would have to make over time. I think that would be helpful, Nancy, in terms of being able to communicate, some of the, getting some of your clients to buy into, this EOS thing.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate that. We have a question from Debbie Horvath. I'm going to let you go ahead and ask away. I think we have some people on here that may have some ideas, either experience share from owners or some of the other advisors. Go ahead, Debbie.
Debbie, are you muted?
Sorry, I couldn't click it right.
That's okay.
So in the process of retaining key leadership members in our organization, in the past, we have offered programs. I guess sometimes they call them handcuff programs. And so that is the position where I'm at right now. I'd like to begin to offer that to my leadership team. And for 2 reasons. Number 1, because I think they deserve it. But number 2, when I go to sell the company, I know for a fact that key management is what they are looking for. And I'd like to be able to make the transition and give them the confidence that I've thought about them in that move going forward. And so I'm not sure where to go to look to find such a plan.
So Debbie, there's just so many tentacles to that. A common thing is something that's called a stay bonus, which just very specifically says, and it's a bonus that's got pretty significant teeth to it. It would say something like, to the extent that you're here 2 years after a transition, you're going to get your salary again, or 1 time or 2 times, something big, so that the buyer sees that to know, okay, that person ain't leaving, and it's just critical to have a stay bonus or equity. Or there are, my advice, if you can't find an exit planner, a lot of lawyers do know about that stuff, who understand about key employee incentives, because there's so many types of packages. But the important thing is that it does get addressed, because as important as you leaving, when you're there saying to a prospective buyer, yes, I'm leaving, and these people love the place, they're going to stay. And the prospective buyer is going to say, show me the beef. And the beef is that you've got a contractual arrangement, which is so exciting to these people that they're not going to leave.
Right. Yes. And we've done it before. We've had a division that we've sold. And one of the criteria was that the 2 individuals that were running that division had to stay for 2 years. And so I understand how it works, and I understand the importance of it. And I do actually have a call with my attorney on Tuesday, and that is definitely going to be one of the topics.
Perfect. And if-
Folks, we have 2 more minutes here. So I'm going to give an opportunity for a
Thank you.
1-minute question, and then we're going to land this plane because we will end on time. Is there one 1-minute question that someone has?
Just a question maybe for Dan. Dan, where do we go to find a quarterback? That sounded like the key player in this whole thing. Where do people go to find a quarterback?
You're not going to like the answer a lot. They're hard to find, but I would say go to either one of those sites. Go to BEI, which is Business Enterprise Institute, or EPI, the Exit Planning Institute, and you'll find their drop-down lists of advisors. So those are people who are quarterbacks, and you'll find names there. You can do geographic searches usually, and you can find somebody that way, but that's the starting point. The problem is the majority of the people on those lists are not, they got their designation just to get the designation to understand more about what they do, not with the intent of being a quarterback. So unfortunately, you might have to run through a few people on that list until you find it somebody who goes, yes, I do play the quarterback role. But that would be the place I'd go to start. Good question.
Well, it is that time. Thank you all for participating in this. We are recording it. Dan did offer you the assessment, and that is free, right, Dan? They can take it online in a few minutes. So if you want that, reach out to any one of us afterwards. Beth, do we have the ability, do we have everyone's emails so we can send a link to that assessment for anybody that wants it?
We do.
Okay, so we're going to send it out. You can act on the link or you can hit delete. It's entirely up to you. But again, thank you so much for spending an hour with us. If there's any questions you have after, please reach out to us at tractionprocess.com. Love to help you. Thank you all. Have a wonderful afternoon and weekend.
Thank you.